Um, awesome. So you're in South Africa now. I mean, we 12 weeks out now. What's the date from
Yeah,
Valencia?
I think now we are like 11 weeks, 12 weeks out right now.
Okay,
So like right in between.
and then we got Budapest on the 12th of October. So that's coming up.
Well, since I was injured, we no longer did Budapest, and so I just went
Oh,
just strictly into training. But now I'm
okay.
finally like last time last time we spoke, I was in London and I did like a 5K race, but I was still coming off that injury, right? So the fact that I finished that at like at least a decent speed, probably not my
Mm,
best, it did build a little confidence and I felt like it built some momentum forward. But
mm.
I ended up not doing any races and just coming down to Cape Town and just jumping into the mix of things. So it's been crazy, man.
What was the so Budapest has been scratched then?
Yeah.
You're not doing that at
Probably
all.
next year. Probably I'll do that one next year, ahead of hopefully Berlin. So
Sweet. So is there no other races now until Valencia?
yeah, so I think that's going to be the interesting part. There's no other races. I may do one race in Nairobi, but it's at altitude, so it may not be like my
Mm,
fastest race, but it'll be a race just to kind of get in that race environment and kind of just involved in the culture too of Nairobi. But
mm.
a lot of stuff is just going to be extremely data driven right now. So, you know, in London, I did do the blood testing before I leave Cape Town. I'm trying to get done with like VO2 max testing, lactate testing, and then obviously the mental edge, which I'm excited to start diving into some of those exercises too, and these sessions. So.
Okay, cool. Nice. So we're heavily testing right now. You said about Nairobi. When will that be? What's the date on that?
That should be October 26th or something. So I may run that just a half marathon and treat it like a long run. But
Mm,
the way it is I'm living at 2,400 meters and Nairobi's at 1,600 meters. So I
okay.
think it'll give me a good kind of checkpoint after 4 or 5 weeks up in the mountains because I'll go there like early October and then
Mm.
kind of see where things are, kind of get in that race environment. And then I just love Nairobi. So honestly, I'm looking for an excuse to get there.
That's fair enough. I mean, what do we do running for? We don't just do it for the performance, we do it for the enjoyment as well, I guess, right?
Exactly, brother. Exactly.
Nice. That's good to know. So, I mean, um, I asked you before we sort of jumped on just to have a think about what you kind of want out of this session today in particular, because we're going to be
Yeah,
chatting every week. Um,
definitely.
there's never not necessarily going to be an agenda for every week. That's not how things roll. It's more as and when things come up, and this is sort of your space to speak your mind, right? And almost have that thought dump, and hopefully I can act as a bit of a mirror to sort of play some of those thoughts back and maybe I guess keep your head in the straight and narrow as we go through prep. So, yeah, does that sound good? First of all,
No, that's perfect. That's perfect.
awesome. So how have things been then? What are the thoughts that you had for this session then?
I think the biggest thing right now is the mileage has increased. So, and by the way, this is probably going to be the lowest the mileage is as the buildup progresses, right? Because we're early in the training block. So the mileage has increased. Last week I did like 65, 66 miles, three training sessions and a yoga session, right? Now, that's great, but also on top of that is building Aiden,
Mm,
right? So I have all these different stressors and travel as well and coordinating a lot of different things for life, right? So I think right now the main thing is moving into this new identity of athlete and CEO, right? Because before I was just running and I was working on a company, but it wasn't like as intense. But now it's making sure that everything is aligned with like who I want to become in the future, right? What does that look like as a runner? What is that trajectory and what are those milestones? And then also as a business, right? Like what are those milestones? Um, what are the Q4 goals, right? We have the Q4 running goals. We have the, Q4 business goals. And I think the way I'm thinking about it and the way running has really helped me a lot is thinking about things in training weeks, if you will, right? So, all right, what can you get done this week, and what's the most important and critical session, or what is the most critical and important task, right? And so I'm kind of lining it up like that right now from a business perspective and from a sports perspective. So really kind of diving into that per se, and kind of managing, the biggest thing is managing those energy shifts, right? Because you come off a 32K long run, and my old identity was like, hey, you grind through everything, right? But you have to balance recovery. You have to balance like actual output, right? From a running perspective and business perspective. And then also your mindset, right? Even from like you talk about biohacking, your glucose levels are lower. You just like, after a long run. So what kind of thinking is best done during those moments? Because you still have to move the needle forward almost every day, right? Which is going back to that 2% better mindset of like, all right, what are those small things that I can do every moment in order to get to the next like milestone or the next level, right? So when you ask me that question, I'm like, I guess it's more so like talking about these things, because I think that's the big moment I'm in right now. Like balancing, I just did a strength session this morning. I just got off a call with a clinic who wants to use the technology, and I'm also now doing this, and I have a session this afternoon, right? But how do you continuously perform at a high level across the board and manage your energy and mindset throughout the day, right? Because I think the overarching thing is, all right, perform in excellence, right? But then it's like managing, knowing when to manage that mindset and when to not feel guilty if you're not being productive, right? And I think we talked about that as even a gap in my mental edge assessment is, how do you feel like productivity isn't like lack of productivity isn't a bad thing, or when discipline can be actually a downfall and not an accelerant, right? So I've been thinking about things from this from the mental edge assessment, and I've also been thinking about like everything that's in front of me today. So I know that's a very long way to go about this, but just wanted to share everything that's in my mind right now.
I appreciate you sharing that. I mean, uh, that feel like a bit of a mental dump for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was like, I needed to get that out of my head, man. But yeah, that's what I've been thinking about a lot, man.
Well, let's get what I always say to the athletes I work with is let's get the puzzle pieces out on the table, and see me as someone who you've just brought over to the table to be able to try and piece those together. An aid to try and help Sable. Is that the corner piece? Is that an edge piece? Does this bit go with that color here? Like, let's try and see what they are. But before we can do any of that, we need to make sure that all the puzzle pieces are on the table, because there could be some on the floor that we're not going to complete the puzzle if they're on the floor, right? So I think the first point is always to have that awareness, and you've got that in spades. But let's make sure that we are seeing all the puzzle pieces, so that we can start formulating that picture. Because when we think about like the mindset that you have, it's very sort of regimented, data driven. It's very clear mindset. So if there's any
Yeah.
sort of ambiguity, I can imagine that's quite hard to work with, right?
Well, I think it's weird because of the traveling, like the nomadic nature of life, I'm actually good with ambiguity as well. So I at least think my systems are flexible, but it does kind of still have to like I always feel like there is a box, if you will, even though I don't like putting myself in a box, right? There's like a framework, I will say, and then there's some flexibility within that, but not much outside of that, right?
Mm.
So yeah, I think there can be some ambiguity, but it does need to quickly get definition, right? Like I'm always like action oriented, right? If there's ambiguity, I'm like, well, what can we get from that? Like, how do we shift that and change that? So
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what we're trying to do here is that, yeah, it's good to have that flexible mindset, but if there is ambiguity, we want to quickly put a label on it and fill it into the framework. And I don't think the framework has to necessarily be a box, like you say, like, yeah, but
yeah,
it's something that fits within your life and the progression towards your goals. Because if it isn't fitting in that, then we discard it and it's like, move on. That's not relevant, right? That's not adding to 2% better. That's actually negative.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
we don't want to be doing that. So that makes sense. So let's try and make sure that we're sort of highlighting those areas of ambiguity and giving them labels and making sure that they're fitting into the criteria that's basically our overall progression, which is what we're trying to achieve. So, I mean, so you said about there, I guess there's a lot of things coming into play. We've got the athlete identity, we've got the businessman identity. I'm sure we've got like the son, the friend. We've got all these different identities that are at play. And when we spoke about it the first time we actually chatted about the stool, right? The three
Yeah,
legs of the stool and those being the
exactly.
identity. Now, I wonder if we can try and define what those legs are right now. Is it a stool? Is it more a chair? Is it, I don't know, a chair with more than just four legs? What have we got right now?
I think it is right now it is still a stool though, right?
Okay.
I will say maybe it's a little bit more than, or like sometimes it feels like another leg is coming, if you will, right? Because you do have to be like, for me, I look at it as like athlete, CEO, like a biohacker, right? But then it's also like partner,
Mm-hmm.
friend. There's like all these other angles that I should actually be considering even more, right? So to your point, like it's easy to look at the three-legged stool as mind, body, soul, right? But then you start having these subcategories, which are maybe sub stools even, right? Where it's friend, it's partner, it's son, it's brother, right? It's all these different aspects of life that you have to consider just being a whole human, you know? And I guess balancing that too, because there's obviously you have family stuff happening are stressors in your life. You have work stuff, you have it's everything, right? So I think to neglect that is actually something that I shouldn't do, you know?
Yeah, and I think what's important to sort of look at now for you is what right now are the most important legs of the stool in this phase of life, which is the next. Let's call it the quarter. Let's say it's the next 3 months. Then, shall we?
Yeah.
What are the important stool legs that we need to be considering to make sure we get to the goal, which we can clarify in a second.
Yes, I think the three main categories are athlete, CEO, and biohacker because I think it feeds everything for the future. So those are what I'm just probably obsessively focused on at the moment.
Okay. All right. Are we obsessively focused on those in equal amounts, or how do we distribute that? Is it 33.3% recurring? Like, how does it look?
I would say I am trying to create a system that makes it pretty much all balanced, right? Because I think the biohacking helps the athlete side and the athlete side helps the CEO side from a mental perspective, from a storytelling perspective, and then also just when you think about Aiden and what I'm trying to build with that, a lot of it is coming from like biohacking principles and philosophies. A lot of it's coming from like the testing on myself and what I believe the world needs in order to like live a healthier life, right? So I I I would like to think that they are all 33.3% and all that, or at least that's the goal, right?
How have they been now, though, with the increase in mileage that you noticed earlier?
I will say the good thing is coming from like an entrepreneurial background now, I know when to plug different people in, right? So I just plugged a PM in who's helping push a lot of things forward, so I'm not the bottleneck, right? And so I do have more time to recover, and I'm kind of watching as things are progressing. But it's like so it does allow me to have at least that 33% still focused on that, on the business, and then still focused on the athlete side, right? But I will say maybe right now on the athlete side, I feel maybe it's 45, if you will, right?
Mm.
Just because I'm like, okay, I need like the mileage has increased. I need to make, I mean, even from the biohacking side, the blood testing shows I really do need to prioritize recovery even more,
Mm.
right? So it's like, how do I guess the thing that's happening is too, maybe it still is 33 across the board, but I feel like I'm over indexing maybe on the athlete side because I plugged someone into the role of PM and things are still moving, but I'm not doing them, right? And so I
Yeah.
think that also, if we're talking about this too, is feeling okay with those 33% on each looking different,
Yeah.
even if I'm not involved in them, right? And they could be, because it could be like other people are helping with each of the 33%. And so even though it might feel like I'm over indexing on something, because the main thing I can't outsource is running.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why it feels like I'm over indexing, right? I actually have to do the training, you know? So
Yeah. That makes sense. I think, yeah, you can't hire a PM to run for you. That's not going to
sadly,
work.
sadly.
um, I wonder then breaking those down because I think does it always have to be 33.3%? Does it always have to be equal? Or no?
I don't think it has to be equal. And I think there's going to be seasons, right? I've even been thinking about this a bit more too, right? There's like marathon specific blocks that running is going to have to take priority, right? But things are still going to be happening, and there's different things happening even for the business because I'm over indexed on running, right?
Mm.
So it's like I think it may feel different, but it'll still add up to 100% if it will. So like maybe I'm over indexing on running and that's like 60% of my life, but it's helping the business in some way. Or maybe I'm over indexing on biohacking at some point, but it's really like improving my running at some point, right? So I think it's constantly going to be flowing all between the three. The goal is to feel like it's ultimately balanced, or that it's like you're pouring, like it slowly starts dripping over. I guess in my head mentally, I'm thinking about, if you think about the cup at the top, maybe there's always going to be one cup at the top and there's these other cups at the bottom that you just keep overfilling, filling. And then it slowly drips into the other cups. I feel like that's always how it's going to be, right? Like maybe running is it, maybe business is it. But once that keeps getting overflowed, it floods into the other buckets, if you will, or the other cups.
That makes perfect sense. There's a little bit of correlation between investing in one more than the other anyway. There's going to be some benefit. Um, I wonder where does you spoke about sort of rest and sort of the biomarker sort of indicating that you need more of it. Where does
Yeah,
rest sit in this equation of balance? Where does that come in?
definitely. I'm trying to make way more time for rest and look at rest as actually part of everything, right? Because you actually, like we talk about cognitive endurance, right? You actually can't have cognitive endurance without rest and recovery. You
Mm.
can't have physical endurance without rest and recovery. So that's also part of the job, right? So being a little bit more like rigid on even my sleep schedule, even if that's a break in the middle of the day, because I think a lot of times you're like on the computer and you feel like you're ideating and all this type of stuff, but really you're, you know, like pedaling in place. And
Yeah.
honestly, that nap will allow you to accelerate, right? So even I think it's really shifting my mindset and perspective in how I look at rest as well,
Mm.
right? It's like you don't really need to push through and feel sluggish in this moment.
Mm.
You need to feel strong in that moment. So in that moment, what will help you like feel strong? Because a task that may take you an hour and a half to do, if you get rest for 45 minutes, can take you 30 minutes to do. So it's
Mm.
it's 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 ultimately net positive for you to take the nap, right? And not feeling
Yeah.
like that's a bad thing. And it's also helping the rest and recovery, right? So it's really just creating, right now I'm looking at everything as systems, right? And constantly allowing that system to flow and have some ambiguity in the framework as well. You know what I mean? Because I think that is important. Even going back to like, is the discipline a downfall or is an accelerant, right? So really kind of keeping that honestly at the anchor of a lot of things after that assessment. So
So, I mean, talking about it, it sounds as if you've got that figured out, but has that been playing out in reality? That obviously that relationship with rest, how's that actually looked? How have you set those boundaries and made sure you follow through with them? And does it actually still in your mind, are you still convincing yourself, or is there still a part of you that's telling you, no, 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 you need to be going, going, going? You said about like that sort of off of the back of what was a 32-kilometer run. You're saying about feeling tired,
Yeah.
but wanting to go, 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 go. You know.
Yeah. I think I'm getting better. I haven't mastered that yet. Like for example, I did the 32K and I probably should just rest and relax but I'm like, oh no, I mean I've been reading these books. I should read the book. I read the book for an hour, then I rested for a little bit. Then after that I was looking at videos on how to automate different workflows. So it's like it's getting better, but definitely not definitely not 100%. And some people may say that's not better, right? But
Mm.
for me that's better, right? Definitely like kind of cutting back on that. And even at night, like after I come back from the evening run, just kind of being okay and saying, hey, like it's okay if you just do 2 hours of nothing, right? Like that's okay, you know? Um, or even figuring out what that looks like. Like maybe it is like after the evening run, while I'm eating, I'm watching a YouTube video, but then all YouTube and reading and ideating and all that should be cut off by um 9 or whatever I deem, right? And then I will say I have gotten better with like on Fridays, I have like these creativity Fridays where I'm just like kind of chilling, thinking. And so that does open up a lot of rest. But that's one day a week. So I do need to little bit make that a little bit more continuous because it is hard to do those double sessions if you're not creating some kind of space for rest in the day, especially as the mileage continues to pick up.
Mm. Yeah, without a doubt. I think it's some. So when we were talking about it earlier, like when we look at identities and how we're filling those, um, does rest exist within an athlete identity?
I think it has to. Like rest and recovery are important. I just think that as an athlete, like everybody's like, "Oh, we're grinding, we're working hard." But I think, at least for me, I had to change my perspective on rest and recovery, right? Like even yoga, right? I don't like when I go do yoga, I'm like, "There's no way this is really working out." Like, you know what I mean? It's not easy, but it's like it's definitely not as intense as my strength session or a running session or whatever it may be, but that alone is helping my running economy. It's helping my flexibility, my hips, whatever, right? So I think it's just reframing what that rest and recovery look like, right? Like you can't get the gains unless you rest, recover, and absorb. So I think it exists, but at least for me, it's really changing my relationship with rest and recovery because
Mm.
it almost seems like there's no time. But I think the biggest challenge that I'm excited about with all this is how do you become a high performance endurance athlete and a high performing CEO? You have to create systems that allow and empower for that, you know? And
Yeah.
so I think that's the challenge, right? I'm working on a LinkedIn post right now that says the most important number for a CEO is not ARR, it's HRV because
Mm.
HRV allows you to really understand how your body is processing all of this stressor and all this. Because anybody can push through and then they get burnt out, whether it's a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever it may be. But if you can keep that HRV as consistent as possible across the board, I think that is the most powerful metric, at least for me, as I'm thinking about, all right, how and when do I train? And then also how and when do I interact with clients or developers or whatever. Like I need to make sure I'm staying kind of calm throughout and at least recovering well every day, you know, whatever the workload is, right? Because cognitively you burn calories as well, right? You heard about the chess players who like burn all these calories and things, right? And so, yeah, I think the main thing is the systems, the HRV, all this type of stuff. So
So you said about like you're getting better at building this new relationship with rest and figuring out what it is to you. First of all, I guess I wonder what that relationship is and like how what that looks like now, and then what's stopping you from, like, in those moments where your body or your mind's telling you to keep going. I really want to sort of dial in, if we can, like imagine like a microscope, put that under the microscope right now and actually analyze those situations, maybe one specific one if you can think of it that's happened recently, so that we can start looking at why your brain may be doing that a little bit more, why it's actually telling you to keep pushing and keep pushing, because then we can start to understand what we need to do to try and combat that conversation.
I think if you talk about Mark Cuban or someone said this, they're like, your competitors are always trying to kick your ass every day, right?
Mm.
And so I keep that in the back of my head in pretty much everything that I do, right? I need to be studying the sport. I need to be trying to move the needle forward. I need to just keep be pushing, 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 right? Because I think that's how you get ahead is volume. In running, right? It's volume, volume, volume. In work, it's volume,
Mm.
volume, volume. How do you get more volume? How do you get more hours, right?
Mm.
And I think that comes from a lot of different ways and in different phases of the business or different phases of running that may look different. You know what I mean? So I think that's what keeps me in that position of like, I have to keep going, you know?
Mm.
I mean, you talk about Alex Hormozy. I don't know if you follow that
Yeah.
guy, but he's
Yeah.
always like, nothing can beat, he said, put out so much value that it would be unreasonable for you to be unsuccessful, right? And I think that's
Mm.
also part of the American mindset too, right? It's like, just keep going, you know?
Mm.
But I do think it's important to keep going. But what I'm trying to understand now is rest is part of continuing to keep going. So
Yeah.
how do you put that into your system and honor the rest?
Yeah. Well, so I think a lot of high performers learn an equation at an early age, whether that be through a parent, a coach, through videos online nowadays. Look, heck, I was uh, one of those people that learned that too, that hard work equals success, right? And hard work is the thing that you need to keep doing, keep doing, keep doing. If we overload that side of the equation, then the resultant effect is going to be inevitable almost, right? Or it's
100%.
going to be a bigger number. The problem with that, I guess, is hard work doesn't always necessarily define the way that we're actually looking at success. So if we look at like numbers in an equation, we know the more numbers in, the higher the number that comes out. That's fair enough. But in life, the higher number isn't always the number that we're always pursuing. Like if we talk about financial gain, for example. Okay, well, we know put the work in and then the money increases, the hours we put in, the
Yeah.
money increases, especially if you're being smart with the hours you're putting in. But does it get to a point where that number doesn't actually have any like great value and it actually is detracting from other parts of your life? There's other parts of the equation that are hidden that we've not actually seen. We've only been brought up to see one side of it, which is input results in this output. Instead, we don't look at the other impacting factors of that hard work that goes in, and maybe there are different segments of that equation. So what I want to do, and because we learn these beliefs at a young age, and when we actually action them and we have success, all we're doing is building up, I guess, belief that that is the way it is, right?
Right.
But the reality is sometimes those beliefs in everything that we go to, we take that belief and we apply it to everything that we do, whether that is building a business or starting a new sport, going into a relationship. Like, I'm just going to give them everything at once. So
Yeah,
they're
that's the
overloaded
thing.
like that. That's way too much, right? So
Yeah.
we take that equation and we apply it to everything because we know it's been successful. The only time that we ever start doubting it is when the success starts to slow down, or it doesn't happen at all. And then that starts to create a bit of an internal conflict. It's like, well, I know that this works my whole life and I've applied it to every section of my life and had success. What do I do now? If the equation doesn't work, then what do I do?
Right.
And I think a lot of people, even if they haven't learned that lesson, they just keep applying it until something inevitably happens, which often is burnout, right? That thing that word that everyone's far too familiar with,
Yeah.
and that's because they've been applying an equation that has success maybe in the short term, but long term isn't necessarily the most, I guess, conducive with longevity, right?
Right.
So when we look at the biohacking side of things, like I think that's right up your street,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so in psychology, what we need to do with these beliefs is we need to make sure that they don't just run in the background without being tested, because if we just continue to let them be there, then the equation is always going to be the thing that we try to put into place, and the results may not always be what we want. So we need to make sure that we're giving our mindset a little bit of an MOT, like we do with a car every single year, and looking at, well, what is the constituent parts, the motor, the engine in my vehicle right now actually the best for the task ahead, or does it need to be tweaked? Does it need to be tuned? So, I mean, opening up a little bit of a conversation here, then, off of what I've said there, is I want to look at what is the equation maybe like young Carmichael learnt. Is it that one that I just said there?
Yeah. Yeah.
How's that been successful? And then is there different parts of the equation that we're now starting to see that we may need to start considering? And is there at points when our brain just defaults back to the initial equation, and that's when we get that almost conflict of you need to just keep going, you need to keep going, because we've got these words, these constant mantras going in the back of our head, like go, 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 and that doesn't always necessarily mean progress, right?
Right. And I think honestly, the reason I think running has been so transformational for me, like, in my life, is it shows that if you continuously do things over the years and slowly build, you actually have like sustainable and long-term results, right? So even if you think about like ChatGPT, Claude, whatever I'm using, right? I'm almost mapping out, like, I mean, even in software development, we talk about things in sprints, right? Where like typically 2 week sprints, we have a very clear and defined goal, and we take these bits and pieces to get there, right? And so I'm trying to actually apply that in kind of my everyday life, whether it's friends and family, whether it's work, whether it's sport. And so I think that's what's also empowering me to get more rest than I typically have, is I'm looking at it as this long-term system, right? I'm not looking at just the goal of, all right, let me hit 230 something in Valencia. I'm saying, well, how far can you get in 5 years? And that's like, well, you have to stay healthy for 5 years. Well, how do you stay healthy? Well, you must get rest. You must do this, right? All right. Well, where do you want the business in 5 years? Okay. Well, you have to get clinic one, then you have to get clinic two, then clinic three. Then you have to build this product and that feature and this, right? And so I think that a lot of those, like approaching it almost like a marathon block, honestly, is actually helping me a lot, right? Because like, okay, cool, we'll go through this 12-week sprint, 16-week sprint. Awesome. Well, like it's okay to rest for 2 weeks, right? And that rest may look different, right? You still may be outputting things, but it's a lot more reflective. It's a lot more um, creative. It's a lot more. You're putting different things in that framework that allow you to do that. So I'm actually honestly I'm like looking at a lot of things that way now, right? I even created a relationship document, right? That actually maps out that actually maps out like these different seasons, right? That are like early marathon build, in marathon, deload weeks, like because all those things actually look different. And I think that everybody has that in their life where there's different seasons and things. But I think being aware of it and then realizing and understanding how you can plug in different things that still allow you to reach your ultimate goal is powerful. So you don't burn out, right? Because all these goals are possible. But I think a lot of people go, and I always say this, a lot of people go 0 to 100 and then they burn out, right? And the 2% better mindset is actually the opposite of burnout. So I need to exemplify that as well, right? Where it's like the slow progress every day, do more than what's expected, but make sure it's sustainable so you can do it every single day, right? And so I think that that also helps me get back to, hey man, rest a little bit. Your output will be better tomorrow. You know what I mean? So it's all these things that like I said, I'm changing my belief around in order to reach the ultimate goal and maximize output. So it's like I am getting like much better with even putting my phone in another room at times, like just having these small levers to like optimize for more rest or optimize for more creative space or deep work even, right? There's time and place for everything.
Yeah, I think those are sort of great systems, and if that 2% mindset, 2% better mindset is actually a good anchor for that, then it's definitely a belief that can sort of, I guess, push out that or replace that old one in a more constructive way. It's still progress,
Yeah.
but progress doesn't always look linear, right?
Yeah. And look, it's like I don't want people to think it's like perfect. There's days where
Mm,
I'm like, I still just want to grind, right? Because I'm
mm,
just like, also when you're building something, you're passionate about it, right?
mm,
So you're like, oh, if I can just spend one more hour, I think I'm so close to learning this thing that I need, right? But no, like take a step back and having boundaries even around that, even though you love it, you know what I mean? Because like you, especially throughout life, like you said, you are conditioned to see that hard work typically does equal progress, but that
mm,
progress may look different. Like progress
mm,
needs to be continuous over a lifetime, and so it must be sustainable.
mm. So how can we then, if we're looking at the season that we're in right now, we spoke about the
Yeah.
split there. We're trying to keep things into thirds, where we're looking at biohacker, CEO, athlete. We're trying to satisfy those. Maybe at times athlete is fluxing, and the perceived involvement of that is greater than necessarily the others. But like we said, that may just be perceived, not actually factual, just because we have outsourced some things to take the strain off of us. Um, and then when we look at like how that's now coming into making sure that we're achieving a goal here, we're making sure that it's not just we're resting to make sure that we can maximize those areas too. So it sounds like that's working well at the moment. Is that fair to assume?
Yeah, I think right now it is. And I
Mm,
think and like when I go to Kenya, I think it will even more. Because
okay.
but because it's like you don't have the social pressures as much in Kenya, right?
Mm,
Like meet the friend here, meet the friend there, do this, do that.
mm,
Like it's none of that, or very little of that.
mm,
So I think it's easier to have that balance there, right?
mm,
Um, and I think it's okay to even have the seasons where it's not where it is not balanced, right? And it's like, oh, well, you're super social. Like when I'm in London, it's like super social all the time. You
yeah.
know what I mean? And I think it's just being okay with that, like that fluctuation. But even there, like trying to make room for like what that rest looks like, you know. But so far, it is working really well, and I feel good about that going into like Q4. I guess we're looking at now.
Yeah, I guess so. It comes around quickly, doesn't it? Yeah.
100%.
So we spoke briefly before about this, and I wonder. We spoke about rest. We spoke about these things being important when they're maybe perceived as like rest is maybe perceived as a backwards move, when actually the reality is it's fueling you up to go double the distance in next time you get up to go. So it actually, as a whole equation, the output is greater. So we spoke about celebrating successes and celebrating moments. Um, I'm keen to hear if there's been any sort of more thoughts around that from your perspective,
Yes.
and how
Yes.
does that fit into the same bucket as rest in a way?
100%. And it's funny because I maybe this is actually from our last conversation, right?
Mm,
Is we talked about like celebrating the small wins and all that type stuff. When I came back from London, I did say like I came back and I just sat down and I was like, wow, man. Like you're meeting really cool people with Get Ahead and you're doing a whole mindset series. That's amazing. Like
mm,
that's a big win. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
MOMO, okay, cool. You're doing something with MOMO. A couple years ago, they were just my favorite kombucha brand that were like, is insane. Same thing with
Mm,
Tracksmith, right? And then also, I've been building this Aiden. I've been like thinking about this Aiden platform and ideating like oh, well, it should be, at first it was like Upwork for like professionals so people can have actually, I talked about this today. I've been wanting to work with a sports psychologist or performance coach, all this type of stuff. And I am, right? Like, so these are big wins. You know what I mean? That should not be taken lightly. Even like I was going into, I was trying to build Aiden and kind of thinking about, at first it was called Human because I was like, oh, the world needs to be more human. Being human is healthy. And then it moved into Aiden. And then I'm working with, Dr. Gurov out of London. And I'm like, all of it's finally coming together, man. Like, this is huge. You know what I mean? So I have gotten much, much better at even celebrating those small wins because I think it allows you to be reflective and just be like, hey, like progress is being made. Because sometimes you're so deep into the weeds where you're like, I gotta keep grinding, I gotta keep grinding, I gotta keep grinding, right? But it's like, hey, the grind is working. Just relax a little bit, and soak this in because this is an enjoyable moment too. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is really cool, man. You know what I mean? And also even something like this is like showing people that like even talking about things from like a mental fitness perspective is not just when things are bad, right? Or when you're going through challenging moments, or if things in your life feel amazing, right? It's like, how do you continuously dissect things or be more reflective on, like champion your own wins, or, hey, is discipline really helping you or not? It's just another sounding board to help you gain mental strength, mental clarity. So like this moment is so amazing. And it's one of the wins I'm celebrating, right? Among some of the other things I just mentioned. But like, yeah, man, I am so grateful that, yeah, right now, because one, imagine you even calling that out made me sit back when I came from London and I was just like, bro, like sit back and celebrate. And when I did, I was just like, let's go. Like I literally was screaming and stuff because I was just like, yeah, man, like it's coming together, bro. It's coming together. Like this is cool. This is very, very cool. So I say all that to say I have gotten better. I guess I had a little
Amazing.
celebration right then, man.
Yeah. I, I was glad to be a part of it. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Just
man.
to
I
just to
appreciate
witness
that
that.
so much, bro. But honestly, I really do think it is. Think about this. Like, if we did not do the mental edge assessment, if we did not meet and we're having these conversations, maybe I wouldn't even been as reflective to think about these things. Like, yes, I do know some of this stuff about myself, but you kind of just brush past it because you're like, I'll talk about that another time. I'll think about that later, right? But
Mm.
at the very minimum, it's creating a space in your day to really be intentional about some of these things. And by the way, none of those things are necessarily inherently bad, right?
Mm.
But they could be blinders for you in seeing something else. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so, yeah, it's amazing, man. It's amazing. So thank you as well, brother.
No, no, thank you. I mean, look, so I say this to a lot of people. When you get involved in this line of work, when you get involved in sitting down and talking to someone, um, some people manage to gain this from just sitting down and journaling. That's great.
Yeah.
But other people need the prompting, they need the mirror, and they need someone to actually schedule it into their day and be like, look, we're going to talk and we're just going to have this open conversation. It doesn't need to be negative. There's no need for that necessarily. If there needs to be some things that come up, they come up, and that's fine. We allow it to happen, and we then discuss it and we dissect it, we unpack that. However, most of the time, the work can almost work a bit like a placebo. And the placebo in this work, in when you're working on your mind, is the fact that all you do is you increase your awareness. That whole pink elephant idea of like when you we're talking, I've said about the pink elephant, don't think about the pink elephant as we continue to talk. All you're thinking about is that pink elephant is in your mind. I can't get it out right now. Yeah.
Right, right.
What we want to
Yeah,
do is we
that's
want to
crazy.
make sure you're just thinking about that pink elephant,
Yeah,
right?
I'm like,
But what we're trying to do is we're trying to take that pink elephant and just put that into and bucket that into like the ideas of like looking at the small wins, thinking about like the beliefs that maybe we're holding right now that have served us, but maybe won't serve us. They don't serve us all the time. Starting to be cognizant of like those thoughts and those patterns of thinking that occur during our day-to-day life that we just let them slide by without giving them any sort of, or just not holding them accountable. And when we work out that equation, as we spoke about earlier, if we're having success, we don't want to tamper with something that's like it's not broken,
Working.
right? Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
working. We don't want to tamper with it. However, does it not mean that it needs to be kept tabs of, and we need to make sure we're looking at it, or there's another way where we can adapt the equation, we tweak it. We're scientists. We're all scientists. We're all trying to explore and figure this thing out. So it's like same with the biohacking. You don't just come up with one stack and like, oh, I'll stick to that for the rest of my life. You
Yeah,
put
yeah.
things in, you try different ideas, and you try and mix up. But sometimes it goes backwards. That's okay. But then we work out what we need to change to make it better. So I think yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And the thing is with celebrating successes, especially for someone that's got this hustle grinder mentality that has served them well, is it almost feels like, well, I don't owe myself to just celebrate. I've still got more to do. I've got more to do, more to do. But the problem is like,
100%.
when are you going to actually celebrate and enjoy the thing that you're doing? And much like a rest day helps you, like I guess, recharge physically, celebrating successes also helps you recharge mentally because it's like, well, I put my head up out of the water. I see where I'm actually going. Oh, I am going in the right direction. I am doing what I want to do. I look back and look, okay, look at all these things that I've achieved. And you bring that with you rather than just leaving it in your wake. Because if we just leave things in our wake, they're not going to help us propel us any further. They'll become distant clouds in the clouded by the fog of life that occurs as we continue. Whereas if we have those things in our sight all the time, then we can use them to progress us. It's the same thing as like people have the chip on their shoulder about maybe something that happened when they were younger, and they keep that image so securely in their head, a negative image, and it propels them. Great. But why can't we do that with the positive things as well? Why can't we bring those along? We are so quick to just cut them off and think, well, no, that's done, it's fine, move on to the next thing. When you've been holding around a grudge about a teacher who said something about you when you were 10 years old, it's like,
Yeah, exactly.
come on, you know?
I actually thought about this the other day too, because I'm like, anytime we go through our worst moments, typically something beautiful happens on the other side, right? And so it's like, I guess even that cliche statement, like lead with the end in mind, right?
Mm.
If you think about it, all of the moments that felt like we were suffering the most actually took us to typically a greater moment. So when you are struggling, maybe you should just be like, oh my God, something beautiful is about to happen. You know what I mean? So like even thinking about those good things and like celebrating those are important to make sure that you maintain perspective on pain, right? Like I was talking about endure, right? And it's like, oh, that pain is great. That's progress. Like
Mm.
let's keep going. You know what I mean? So yeah, yeah. And I know that maybe defeats the no grinder mentality, but even if you're resting, there still may be struggle when you're supposed to be grinding. And that friction is okay too. You know what I mean? So, I've been thinking about a lot of this stuff, man.
Sometimes rest is the hardest thing, yet the grinder will be so happy to go do a killer workout. But it's like, but what if is the rest the more uncomfortable thing? But you're trying to
Yeah.
seek discomfort in sweating like out of your eyes. Like, but instead, why can't you actually just sit with rest? And for me, that what that shows is that you haven't actually mastered that sort of uncomfortable emotional position. A physical discomfort, you're great with.
Right.
Emotional discomfort, that's a different thing altogether. And especially in a competitive space, because you need to sit with emotional discomfort, it's going to come in waves on race day without a doubt. You know.
Especially over 2 hours running. Like even my long runs, right? I mean, my foot fell asleep. You know, I'm like, "Ugh, do I have to keep running? Like, you have so many, so you do have to deal with that. And to your point, rest is that uncomfortable feeling you should sit with a bit, you know?
Mm, without a doubt. So,
So,
so I mean, look, we've spoken about a load today, and I hope that just sort of bringing those things into momentary consciousness has helped a little bit.
Definitely,
What I
definitely.
would like to do is just to think about. I'll go away. We'll do. I know you did your mental edge before, but now we've got the it all into the app. It'll be great to get you
Yeah,
to do it. Go through the full process of doing it in the app, and it will create a custom plan for you too.
perfect.
Um, I'll then go through the back end and I'll maybe make some tweaks based off of our chat, so it's got a bit more nuance of what we want to do. So by the time next
Perfect.
week comes around, you would have done a few sessions already to help, I guess, keep on top of things, right?
Definitely.
After the things we spoke about. Something I think will be interesting to explore is we spoke about beliefs and having a bit more awareness, and I think that's maybe the angle I want to sort of look at and reflect on this week is
Cool.
what other beliefs, what other sort of thought patterns does Carmichael have right now that, okay, they've served you, but are they, well, question them, challenge them. Are they actually still serving? Are they always serving? Are they better at sometimes other, compared to others? Do we need to maybe adapt and tweak that equation? We spoke about the equation of hard work, but are there other beliefs and thought patterns right now, you know? Just bring that into a little bit of, be a bit more cognizant of that and see if there's something that we can just explore. Keep the mindset MOT, right?
Definitely, definitely. I like that. Mine's. I'm taking notes too, man.
Love it.
Perfect. No, that's perfect. Different beliefs and angles that no longer serve you. What does that look like? How does that shift? Perfect. Yeah, man. No, this is good. I'm gonna try to keep a journal of our sessions as well to kind of reflect on a bit more too throughout the week. And I know those exercises will help as well. So yeah,
Yeah, I'll we'll create a workout as well, and we've got the AI mindset coach as well, which you can sort of go back and forth with like a mental check-in if you want.
perfect.
And before each call, we'll each day in the morning, I'll send you like three simple questions just to think about. You can write them down if you want to, but it'll just be something to prime your mind for the session. Was there anything like just before we close? I mean, yeah, anything that you wanted to sort of ask, wanted to say about, wanted to sort of get off your chest right now, or is it like are you sort of fine where you are right now?
No, I think this is good. I think this is really like constantly calibrating the athlete CEO operating system is kind of what I like to call it.
Mm.
Is how do I constantly recalibrate this, right? And to your point, it's like biohacking and there's seasonality to it, and it'll look different at different points, right? So I'm constantly thinking about like that athlete CEO mindset because I do believe every CEO is an athlete. Every every person really is an athlete. You're trying to
Mm.
perform at a high level in your job as a parent, as a whatever, right? As a son, like we talked about all those different stools, or legs of the stool, is everyone is trying to perform and ideally be their best in whatever area that looks like, right? Nobody wants to be a bad friend. No one wants to be a bad. So having this awareness is so critical, I think, and kind of magnifying and highlighting that. And like you said, a lot of people can get it from journaling, and
Mm.
some people need this mirror as well. So I'm happy to have the mirror, and I need to start journaling a lot more as well because maybe that'll allow us to get deeper as we keep progressing through the sessions and the
And
exercises as well.
yeah,
So
the workouts on Get Ahead are almost like are structured journaling, right? They're prompts that are going to be
yeah,
directed towards things that you need
yeah,
to
I do
work on.
like
So
that too. I like
in and of
that.
itself, that might be those will help, I guess, help that as well. So if you want, like, obviously, journaling, like free form journaling is great as well. Being able to just write
Yeah,
things
but
down.
even the prompts in the app are extremely helpful too, right? So it's like I think we're gonna get a lot out of this, and then I don't want to speak too soon, but I think I think the 2:30 something's gonna be hit too, So
Awesome. Oh, mate, look,
Yes,
that
brother.
was brilliant. I really appreciate it. Again, thanks for your
Definitely.
openness, and we've got, yeah, a week's time, I guess.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to it.
Sweet.